everybody. It is Friday. Thank God Friday. Excited for today. Looking forward to the weekend. Last weekend we had our Easter service, our sunrise service, and then the morning service, and it was well attended, and it was exciting. And then this Sunday we'll be doing just a regular Sunday morning service, but in our second service we'll be doing the Lord's Supper, and excited about that. Looking forward to all that God has for us. But it is Friday, and it is time for Thank God Friday. I'm always excited to do these. It's amazing to me. I'll plan all week. I'll plan weeks in advance, different things that I'm going to do, and then the morning of, sometimes God will give me something special or different. Sometimes I've asked my son what I should do, and the Lord amazingly works through him and around him. And so I'm thankful for just God's power in my life, God's constant patience with me, and the way He continues to guide and help me to work in different parts of my life. As I woke up this morning, you could hear the wind whistling through the windows. You could hear the wind shaking the trees outside. We've come to April, and we're at that point where we're getting that first windy April showers storm. And you hear it coming up, driving around. You can see the apple orchards and the other farmers and the gardeners, different things like that, going through and then cutting the trees and then getting the dead branches out and taking care of all of that. And that's what the storm does. Storm does all of that without man having to get involved, without man doing anything. God's gardening plan. God put man in the garden, told him to tend it, and then God goes through and He takes care of the business. Because of who God is, because of God's power, because of all that He has, all that He does, God doesn't need man, and yet God loves man, and God works His power in our lives and through us and in us. And sometimes we get to see that in the storms, and that's why I like storms. As I came out of the apartment building, coming to church this morning, I met one of my neighbors, and again, my German is really bad. But he asked me about the weather. I think he said he was a little bit frightened of it, or his dog was. I can't remember which. But I said, it's windy. It's bad. It's windy. But I like the wind. And he said, yeah, but it's dark and powerful. And I understood that. And we see that in the storms. But we have to understand, it's in those storms we see God's power. 3 times in the Bible we see storms. We see this amazing progression in the storms. The first storm we see, Christ is in the boat, Jesus is in the boat with the disciples, and He's asleep, and in the midst of the storm they're doing everything they can. They're trying to work and row, and the water's coming into the boat, and they finally wake up Jesus, and they say, aren't you worried? We're going to perish. And in that they finally turn from their efforts to God. And God says, peace, be still, and they're amazed at His power. We have this tendency in our life to always try and do it all ourselves, and yet the storms bring us to that place where we have to turn to God. We have to ask for help. We have to ask for peace. And we see that when the second storm comes along. We see Peter and the rest of the disciples in the boat by themselves. Christ has gone up into a mountain to pray, and as we're told they're toiling and rowing and trying to get the boat to go where they want it to be, and Christ is walking to them in the storm, and they're afraid. And again, they call out to Him. Their first fear is that they see a spirit or a ghost, and they realize it's Christ. Peter says, if it's really you, call me, and I'll come walking out to you. And we see this desire to try and do everything in our lives, and then finally a recognition that God is there. We don't have to be afraid of Him or His power, and He wants us to be with Him. And so the storms in our life, and I say all of that because at church we're really going through a period of storms and difficulties and problems and struggles, from financial, health, personal issues, all of that. Please keep Miss Susan's brother Magnus in prayer. He had to go to the hospital the other day. He was bleeding from his ear. Apparently he had a double ear infection. It hemorrhaged the eardrum and bleeding from the ear, and just all of that, health issues and struggles and jobs and gas prices and everything going on, and yet through all of it, God is there in the midst of this storm. He's just waiting for us to call upon Him. And in that calling upon Him, we get to see, when we get to that place where we can't do it anymore, and we're looking around for help, and we suddenly see Him, and we call out to Him, that time of prayer in the storms are when we get to see God's power. And so I'm thankful for the storms. I love storms. I told my neighbor that. I love the wind. I love the storms. I love the power. But we also have to remember that it's a scary time, and things can get out of hand very easily because we're not in control. And so we turn to the Lord, and we get to see His power. Look around. Look for somebody that's in the midst of a storm in their life today. Ask yourself, can God help them with this storm? And the answer is always yes. The storms are in our life to show us God's power, to help us to be that guide, to help us be that one to show them. Sometimes the storms are in our life so other people can see that God can help them too. Sometimes the storms are in other people's lives. Sometimes we're all in the storm together. But whatever it is, the storm is there so that we get to see God's power more clearly. We might not understand it. We might not recognize it. We might have to go through it. But it's always there so that we can call out to Him and see His power. I hope you have a great Friday. I hope God brings somebody to you today that you can truly help and see that help so that you understand the power that's there. Hope you have a great Friday. See you on Sunday. Please pray for the church and the services and the people here. A lot of difficulties and a lot of struggles. Hope you'll have a great